Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Whenever you happen to stand to this truth bomb riff, we are coming at you right after the amazing State of the Union and on February 24th, 2026. It's a Tuesday. And I'll share my thoughts momentarily, but why don't you get us started, Roseanne? Tell us what you thought about it.
Okay, here's the first thing I thought. I'm watching people come in. And I've seen that countless times. This is like a party for everybody. It's a party. Nobody is fucking serious. Everybody's glad handing and smiling. How can people be having a party when we have people suffering and dying all over this country, all over the world, and they're having a fucking party?
Wait a second. They're suffering and dying all over the world through every administration, every single time. This was a little bit different, but I hear what you're saying, but you're so that is so cool at the same time. It's like, wow, it's such a Roseanne thing to say, in my opinion,
It
because
is. Yes, it
it's
is.
like
It is.
really all you ever see is the suffering of the world. And that's where you begin everything. And so you look at this as kind of a glad handling, made for the cameras. Everybody can make their assessment, and it's just a show, and that's typically what it is. And
And I'm going to tell you,
it's
that's
in
not the
the midst of
first.
what we already know that has already been all over social media, but particularly Bluesky all day, and some of the things that I posted earlier. Of course, Epstein victims that were sitting in the chamber, obviously that weren't even addressed or, excuse me, acknowledged. And I'll just
Yeah.
that. But there was so much more. But please continue because, so I mean, it doesn't matter that it was a State of the Union. Your bottom line is people are suffering and dying all the freaking time, and you got a president and people that are surrounded by him that obviously not connected to that whatsoever.
And I'm going to tell you, this is how I have felt every time I've watched a State of the Union. Every time I see state dinners and all these uh, entertainers coming to the White House. This is what I see all the time. I I never cared
Kind of
who
funny.
it was. Never. Okay? I don't care.
Yeah, the pomp and circumstance you could give a shit about. So you're like, State of the Union, schmammy, spansy, whatever. I'm like trying to make up some goofy name in my mind. So I mean, what you just saw doesn't mean anything anyway. So okay,
But see, I think it does mean something to some people. Otherwise, it would not have been staged perfectly. Bring in the Purple Heart, bring in this, lift up the 5-year-old girl.
bring in all the white people and the anti-trans people and everybody who doesn't give a flying you know what about anything except for what we can clearly see, which is kind of a white supremacist, aristocracy vintage. I'm just going to say what that world has always been, from Jim Crow through John Birch through, America First and what those guys are all about. I mean, that's what I saw. But you know what else I saw that you haven't mentioned that you seem to not be attuned to because you're really in the plight of the suffering and the folks that obviously don't have a voice and aren't in
I
that
got
and
into making,
the folks that really didn't have anything to do with voting in a way that would prevent that from happening, for example, among other things. 11 million, 13 million people didn't vote that are suffering, right? So
yep.
you know what, the jackboots are like, you know what, go fuck yourself. You didn't vote. Ha! How about that? in addition to not having a choice and all of the other things that people can be purist and blah 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 and all of the other problems with this look, I'm sorry if I'm sounding a little bit jaded and cynical, but let me tell you what I saw briefly and I'll let you continue, but I want to point this out first.
Okay.
You know what I saw?
What?
Declaration that we will never see a free and fair election in the history of the United States. That's what I saw. Do you really think they're not going to pull out every trick in the book to make sure we don't have an election? Regardless of what we've heard from our good friends in the new Untouchables who are like, you can't fuck with state elections. You can't do that. There's no way. Unless, but what did we see in the last election? What I saw in the last election is stuff that I don't have answers for. Do I think, I do know from the great work of Greg Palast that, there was supposedly 3.5 million voters purged from the registry in the swing states based on Jim Crow sort of shenanigans, which is illegal, but they're not legal. And there's all that sort of stuff depending on whether or not you have the legislatures, especially in the swing states, not to mention the stuff that we know about documentation fabrication, all that kind of stuff with the electoral fraud that took place in 2020. Did some of that stuff happen in 2024? I don't know. And then we heard about all of the anomalies, right? Did we not hear about the anomalies of, all of the statisticians that are saying he got 100% at this part, in these hours, like 6 to 9 p.m., that will never have happened, but they were never investigated. So how would we know? We don't know, right? But I can assure you, and everybody watching this, the main message from that State of the Union is you will never see another election in your lifetime. That's what I saw. Somebody challenge me, tell me I'm wrong.
Patrick, all I know is that Al Gore never became president.
Hanging chads and electoral college and everything else.
Okay. So what I'm going to say is at 76 years old, I have seen people take ballots, paper ballots. That's how old I am, and crumble them up and throw them away. Okay. I've seen it. I've seen people.
You're seeing voter fraud.
I'm talking about voter fraud. Yeah. Okay. I've seen it.
In Chicago and Vegas or just Vegas?
Chicago.
Okay.
I haven't seen it. In Chicago, when I first voted, we used paper ballots. My first vote, Patrick, you were 3 years old when I first voted. Yeah, you were 3 years old. Okay. Anyway, we are fucking imperfect people. Will there be fraud? Will there be this? Will there be that? Of course there will. But that person, that moronic, no good, black-hearted, whatever he is, cannot stand up there and tell me he's going to have a war on fraud headed, headed by
that's trending on Bluesky right now.
Headed by J.D. Vance.
Right. Okay. But wait a second. He gave one of the precepts of the Clean New Deal. I wonder if Steve Bannon gave it to him because we know Steve Bannon has checked out our stuff. He said he's going to end insider trading from Congress. And he poked, he's like, hey, where's Nancy Pelosi? She's not standing for this, is she? Ha, ha, ha. I was like, wow. But then I'm like, oh yeah, Marjorie Taylor Greene made out with 27 million after 6 years. And I'm thinking to myself, good luck with that, even with your own people. To me, that was shocking. Where do you think that came from? It came out of nowhere. Have you ever heard him say anything even remotely like that?
No. Did you see the badge that Nancy Pelosi was wearing?
No. What did it say? Because I kind of fell asleep, to be honest.
Released the files.
Oh.
And it had the word like Epstein crossed out.
Okay, you know what though? Let's address that though. That's fresh, okay? Because right before the State of the Union, I saw what was a gathering of Rokana. I was about to say, I keep getting that mixed up with Raskin and Rokakis, and for whatever reason that comes in my mind.
Jamie Raskin
But
and Ro Khanna.
yeah, it's Rokana. But anyway, he and Garcia and a handful of women and
Yeah, I saw him on that People's State of the State.
right, and it was like, it really tore me asunder because on the one hand, I was like, I was completely with the women that are the survivors and everything that they want released. And they all said, all of them, bar none, this has gone on for 4 administrations. Okay. And then we get Chuck Schumer, who basically says, oh, I'm all in, right? I'm all in. Chuck Schumer, the guy who's been there the whole time, who's been part of Nancy Pelosi and Eric Holder and Merrick Garland and so on and so forth, that didn't release the Epstein files. Okay, and I'm like, how stupid is this situation, right? And then they're always talking about this is the largest cover up in history. It's the tip of the iceberg of what we reveal to you day in and day out, which is the exact same protocol, the same psychosis, the same psychology, the same asymmetrical information, all of the same things that are in play when you predate upon someone either sexually or you steal their net worth, I guess, right? And then you throw them in the garbage. The difference is there's 1,200, 1,600 victims of the Epstein scenario. And yeah, I'm sure it was grotesque as children being raped by old men and sick. And I'm sure there was violence and some committed suicide. And it's absolutely horrible. How many people were involved with the predation of the 2008 great financial crisis that stemmed from minorities to elderly women to pensioners and everybody in between?
And took generational wealth, not
Right.
just the wealth.
Right. How many people, roughly?
16 million roughly start there.
No, 150 million worldwide
Oh,
at
but
least.
look,
16 million filed foreclosures,
that's
representing three, median household in 2009. That's 48 million people right there alone, and that's the beginning. That's it, because it wasn't just people that were, below the line in subprime loans, which are a misnomer because of just the nature of how things are identified and it's too long to litigate and to educate and everything else. But there was over 100 million people globally. It took out countries. It took out pensions. It was enormous. How much did it cost that we know of?
to
42 trillion to GDP in the first 2 years, 2009, 10, 11. I think it was that time period. But we ended up, it was a $4.5 trillion housing bubble that went into a $900 trillion global calamity that we ended up plugging the holes, not of $700 billion with TARP, but with 33 trillion, according to Randall Wray and the Levy Institute. And it's not just banknotes, Judd, if you're out there watching this. It had a whole litany of different scenarios. But if you're going to try to explain that there's two different, scenarios, and that those banknotes that go into backstopping, I guess the whatever, when you think of Dodd-Frank and you think of the ratios, right, into the banks, that doesn't get into the real economy. The point to people like you and that talk about banknotes, then where did the money come from to purchase the liar's loans that were on the books of the banks to then transfer it to the Federal Reserve? It's all so stupid, it's unbelievable. But to make the point about, the Epstein scenario that was completely ignored during the State of the Union, where there was a couple of hiccups. From what I understand, I think, the congressman from Texas stood up with a sign and he had something that black people aren't apes, right? In response to Donald Trump,
yeah,
doing
yeah,
his
yeah.
Truth Social meme of the Obamas, as monkeys or apes, in the vile scenario that he is. But the uh, the the net for me, and I'm a little overwhelmed with all of the bullshit that he talked about, but I want to point out the most ridiculous things that we knew were coming. But again, Donald Trump, who just goes on his own tangent in his own stream of consciousness, at one point starts talking about savings of his administration because of what he's able to maneuver. And he tries to use Bernie Sanders sort of positioning as it relates to healthcare and the big dirty greedy pharmaceutical companies stealing the wealth of elderly people and so on and so forth. And he's like, what I've got going for you is I'm going to give you 300, 400, 500% savings in Trump RX. And I'm thinking to myself, you know what? Right after, and we'll talk about Abigail Stern. How do you pronounce her last name?
Bamberger.
Spanberger. Her response, we'll get to that in a second. But I, was listening to Rachel Maddow and, of course, all of the hens of MS Now. And not one of them right away blew that up. I mean, that was the first thing that we should have talked about. This stupid, the guy's got no credibility. He's an idiot. Everything he said about jobs, everything he said about no, illegal immigrant coming over the border, everything he said about any stat, you got to think to yourself, he's lying, or he doesn't know what he's talking about. He's just making up shit right out of his ass. Anybody who's going to say that,
Nobody's fishing in the ocean anymore.
my God, it's just so stupid. And then what else? Think about some other highlights. What other kind of things stood out to you because it was so absolutely outrageously mind
And
numbing?
he
Went on
said,
for 2 hours. It was the longest in history.
yeah, an hour and 47 minutes, but that's okay. Okay.
Well done.
He's talking about we're going to have this transformation. It's going to be a turnaround for the ages, a turnaround for the ages. What are we turning into? That he,
Wow. Yeah.
okay,
Well said.
that he thinks,
A fascist state.
okay, is so wonderful. But see, uh,
On the
things that,
250th anniversary of the American Revolution. Yeah, all of those wonderful things that he acclimated to. It's like, I'm going to destroy all of that and I'm going to replace it with me stealing billions of dollars. I'm going to train wreck the East Wing. I'm going to make it a bunker for myself and my team that we can never get out of. I'm going to steal billions. I'm going to cut about freebies here and there and everything else. And then I'm going to do what? I'm going to save this young woman who couldn't figure out what sex she wanted to be. So I got her thrown into a scenario to where she ended up going back to becoming a woman and she got a scholarship to Liberty University.
yeah,
Oh my God, that was incredible. Go ahead.
I thought that was the most tasteless,
Yeah.
sad, awful thing for that poor girl. Her parents were like, keep me away from them. I don't want to be in their family. But it was so tasteless.
Okay,
So awful.
it was gross. It was just so, and then you see Mike Johnson in the background, and a lot of people speculate that that guy's as gay as they get, which I would not be surprised. Not like there's anything wrong with that, to borrow a turn of phrase from Seinfeld back in the 90s.
Right.
But okay, the fraud part, okay? He's like, we're going to wage war on fraud. Okay, every projection is a confession in the lie, deny, switch the blame universe of the freaking Emperor's New Clothes on really bad acid. That's the Mad Magazine Mad King. My God, and that's trending right now. Meanwhile, let's add all of this up, right? So you got the pre-show about the Epstein victims that are there to embarrass him, humiliate him, put more pressure on him. He just bulldozed over them and ignored them. Made up a bunch of crap for 2 hours, that's 1 hour, 45 minutes, that said absolutely nothing, most of which were predicated on lies. And I don't know, have we got 100 million barrels, or what did he say, from Venezuela on top of it all?
Yeah, we got all, but that oil, according to everything I've seen is not usable.
Right, I'm sure, but I'm like, wait, exactly. So it probably went into the refineries. It's going to go through its things, and then we got rid of all of the regulation, so it's going to pollute like crazy. Anybody living in a stone's throw of those refineries down in Baytown, Texas, and wherever in Louisiana, they're all dead. Mark them for dead. Good luck to you guys, as you were like giving a standing ovation for the non-trans thing and everything else. I mean, that's how twisted and insane this is, But the fraud part, my God, for me, it's like, okay, think about let's talk about Abigail Spanberger, right? Okay, so one of our new Untouchables obviously supported her campaign. He is the former, lead prosecutor of the Department of Justice, one of the brightest guys that we've ever met. He's incredible. His just everything about him just is like a huge a shot of adrenaline in my chest, aka Pulp Fiction back in the day. For those of you know who that reference, I love this guy, and he was a huge, huge supporter of Abigail. And when I listen to her, she sounds to me like, the polished politicians that I've grown up with that come out of the parties, well educated. They speak this good game. They speak about principles, ethics. They try to be red, white, and blue, and baseball, hot dogs, apple pie kind of thing. And she does this from a lens. And this is where I'm kind of like, wow. She, CIA. And I'm thinking to myself, oh, she's going to talk about the Epstein files. And we know probably the biggest hoard of Epstein files that exist anywhere is going to be in the CIA. Okay. And I'm like, given everything that's happened in the last 25 years, from 9/11 to the war on terror to all of these different, throw out our rights and all of the things that would lead to ultimately become ICE and everything else, not to mention 2008, because of what I saw with none other than Rajan Cohen at Sullivan and Cromwell. The CIA is everywhere, right? Not in a good way. Not in a good way. I like Abigail because of Paul. I trust her because of Paul, to be honest with you. But at the same time, she's talking about what, Roseanne? She's talking about the affordability crisis. Did she tell us anything about what creates the affordability crisis?
No, see what she does, and I'm going to say this because of the trust I have in Paul. Okay. A lot of stuff that she's never going to say in public. Ever. Ever, never. And she's going to talk about how many seats they won and when she first won and blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. Okay. But the real shit happens, and it's just like the first time I ever heard Tom Murphy,
Who are they having lunch with?
who was the head law enforcement officer that had the team that was
Yeah, they put the investigation team. I'm trying to think of the special. It's kind of almost like a special ops of investigators to get inside the crimes taking over, Northeast Ohio, which were the same crimes that are happening out the United States because of Mark Dan's interest to get the actual resources to these guys and what they did, which was to blow up the forensics and the audits of what was a financial crime of mammoth magnitudes, which creates the affordability crisis, people.
That's right.
And the worst part about, and here's the thing with Rajan Cohen against CIA and them being in the midst of the bailouts that would lead to this 33 trillion and then 49 trillion that I continue to tell everybody about, that nobody seems to be able to register in the midst of all of this other stuff, is that when you give trillions of dollars to the billionaire apparatuses to control and loot and buy, of which, Trump squeezes in there, oh yeah, I'm going to prevent Wall Street from buying up all the houses around the country.
Yeah, okay.
Show me the receipts on that.
We'll get your, he says to the woman, you wait, honey, we'll get your house.
Yeah, no, really. Like, it's like, what has he done? I haven't seen anything written in the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, the Washington Post. I haven't seen any policy. I haven't seen anything. It was just like something he slipped in because he knew it was popular. Because he likes to. What is it called when we basically lift something, we steal something. Like we plagiarize. Like he used to always plagiarize Bernie, but for the white, working Nazi class. Quite frankly, not the white working class, but the white, man's burden hatred of everybody else. That's what he would do. He would bring Bernie into his conversations in 2015, and he would plagiarize them and then make them, palatable for the white guy. That's the Archie Bunker guy. That's like, it's the immigrants that took my jobs and everything else, yada, yada, yada. So anyway, I mean, look, come on, man. The affordability crisis is the first thing that the Democrats address without telling us what caused the affordability crisis, from a woman who worked at the CIA, and the CIA is all over everything that's the problem, and yet she is very polished, much smarter than Trump. In a one-on-one, I'd prefer her over Trump, to be honest with you. I'd prefer, quite frankly, Charles Manson at this stage over Donald Trump. Okay, that's how unbelievable this grift is. But to think that the country would have to sit through 2 hours, specifically 1 hour and 45
When 47 minutes. Yeah, right.
of what exactly? What he did there, what I saw, the whole thing.
All he kept going, immigrants, 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 immigrant.
Well, that and you won't let us get these guys out of the country who are stealing everything, who are driving up all the costs, who are basically sucking the lifeblood out of the United States, and you're getting our way. And look at all these Democrats who are literally they're alive.
You're crazy. You're crazy. He goes, they're
They're crazy
crazy
too. But he
people.
also, but he also is just like, like in a schoolyard. He's just like picking a fight. Everybody
That's
get
right.
on my side. What we're gonna do is I'm gonna identify these guys. I'm gonna tar and feather them, and it's really no different than the shit that I used to see, and the all the documentaries of early Nazi Germany. That's what it's the Jews' fault. Well, in this case, a lot of Jews are on his side. Are they
Yeah.
not? Not to
Yeah.
mention his commerce director and whatever that means. But the long and the short of it is, it's like it was so outrageous. But I swear to God, I'll go back to what I heard, and I'm missing a lot of details in my mind because I'm so outrageous about the fact that what he was doing, sum total for me, was telling the country, you will never see an election again. What did he say? We're not going to let them take the election. We're not going to let them do it. They stole it the last 2 times. I should have been in there a third time. They stole it. They are going to do it again. We're not going to let them pass the SAVE Act now. You've got to have you got to have women. You got to have a passport. You got to have your ID. You got to have this, that, and the other. And they're going to have cops out all over the place, or guys like ICE and masks that are going to be, intimidating the living hell out of people that don't want to go there because they don't want to end up being like, Renee Nicole Good or Alex Preddy. That was the message in Minneapolis, I think. Hey, get in the way of what we're going to do. You're dead. That's what I saw, and that's what I heard. Tell me I'm wrong.
I'm not going to say you're wrong because I thought the Vietnam War was going to go on forever.
Yeah.
I thought Nixon was going to stay forever. And the war ended. Nixon left, but it was kind of like the end of a different beginning. Okay. It was the end of a different beginning. He left, but things little by little by little, with Ford's pardoning of Nixon, got worse. And now they are going at from Spaceballs. They're at ludicrous speed. Okay.
I love
Now,
that. Yeah.
here's the other thing. When you are an old person, and I'm gonna say, well, I guess like maybe in your 70s or 80s or 90s or 100, there are certain things you remember. And one of the things that hit me right between the eyes, and I bet I can ask any person who's over 75 years old, I could ask them this, and I'll say, what did bringing all these people on, What did it remind you of? Okay. And they're going to say it reminded them of a television program called This Is Your Life
Right. Wow. Well said, by the way. Yeah,
with,
I was thinking that when you were actually setting that up.
okay, with, here's Ralph Edwards. Okay. Here's Ralph. Come on, Doc. Come on, join us.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of the old people, and the reason I moved from where I lived a year ago is because I couldn't stand being with the old people because
They were MAGAs.
they were like crazy.
But they were MAGAs too, weren't they? In Boulder City.
Yes, but you don't have to be a maggot, okay, to be where I lived.
Mhm.
The old just the old, let's watch Wheel of Fortune. Let's, oh, okay. Now, and there's also this thing about respect and decorum and stuff like that, okay? That old people, not me, but old people have. And because I saw a little thing about a woman who, the other day on a TikTok thing said, oh no, he's so transparent. Oh no, he's so honest. Oh no, he just tells the truth all the time. You have to be totally without any senses, with no senses whatsoever. No use of your eyes, your hearing, your brain.
Well, yeah, no, I agree completely. But see, here's the thing about that, and I've known this my whole life, by the way. And I could do the same thing, quite frankly. What he was doing was he was patronizing, if you will, the religious right, was he not? He was like, hey, this is like God is coming down from the heavens.
That's coming. He's
Handing you.
coming.
There was at one point he literally said after he gave the Presidential Medal of Honor or Freedom or something like that. Yeah, I'd give one to myself or something like that. I don't know if you
Oh,
remember
yeah,
that.
yeah. I want one myself.
I could get myself one if I wanted to. But I mean, he shows himself in between all this other like, this circus routine, which is like to your point about this is your life, and it's like he knows when to get the applause from those guys. He knows that look, just hit the points that they want to hear. Jesus is on our side. That it's all about the white man's burden. We all know what we're all about, and it's about them is the problem. And you know that I got your back on that, and I got you, and you got me, and together we're okay here. And look at all these
My
wonderful.
buddy Charlie Kirk.
Yeah,
Hey
but oh my
there,
God,
buddy.
that was incredible, right? When they saw her, I mean, that was the most mayonnaise State of the Union I ever saw, except for the one point when they turned it on Ilhan Omar and who was the woman that sits right next to her from Michigan? Uh,
Yes, yes, yes.
the
Two
two
of them.
brown women, one's Muslim and the
Right.
other one is, and I'm sorry, my mind's a little tired at the moment because I'm kind of, I wonder if everybody else feels like I did. I felt like I was like, I don't know, he kind of put me to sleep, to be honest with you. Towards the end there, I was just kind of like dozing off, like he was meandering in a way that was. Did you get that sense, or were you hanging on his every word towards the end?
I was listening so that I could say, you have no proof of this, you have no proof of
Good
that.
for you.
And this is what you need to do,
Yeah,
Abigail Spamberger.
yeah.
This is what you need to do.
Right, but what did she do? Tell me what you heard there, because I know we went over it, and I don't want to necessarily repeat it to set you up. But what did you hear from her?
She was saying we need to demand better. Okay. I heard her say that a few times about demanding better.
But the first thing she did was all about the affordability crisis. So that's what the Democrats are going to run on. They think that's what they got with Zohran Mamdani. They think they got this across the board. Again, But what do we do? Like in the con, I'll just say this out loud because this is where I was going, and I'm sorry to step on you. But in the con, we show you that the whole thing is predicated on appraisal fraud. Honestly, the entire 2008 great financial crisis was predicated on appraisal fraud, which is illegal. But a rolling loan knows no loss. And what that means is if the house is going up in value, the bank's going to loan to it. All of the people that are in the food chain are going to get paid higher, fees, commissions, and basically they do that over and over and over. And as long as the value of the house is still going up, the bank has the credibility to, in the case that somebody forecloses here and there, they can sell it right away, right? Because it
But
maintains.
Patrick, wait, you can't say it started with the appraisers. The appraisers would not have done or given the incorrect, inflated value of the homes had they not been forced to.
Well, that's true.
Okay, so yeah,
No, 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 but you don't understand. Okay, you're right about that, but you got what I'm talking about is the net total game. Okay, the CEOs have to create a number that's going to inflate the amount of loans that they can get that are predicated by the loan to ratio values and the values that were then twisted in all of these different high yield spread premiums and all the different vectors of a product that they could do where it was like, okay, look, we can give you a negative AM, which was like no money down, lower than the interest rate and all this stuff, but on a 3 year, prorated basis, and then hits year three and it's going to hyperinflate. And then it would reset. Okay, there was so many freaking tricks. Okay, it was all a lie, and it was all a lie to keep people flipping houses, to keep going. So it was that's what creates the affordability crisis because at the end of the game, this many years later, 13 years later, what happened was, as you well know, the entirety of the housing system collapsed, where then the prices should have been bargain basement. But guess who came and picked them all up? The big investment banks. Why? Because we gave them tens of trillions of dollars. So Donald Trump tonight says, I'm going to end all that. I'm going to end the insider trading. He's going to use two principles of the precepts of the Clean New Deal. I'm going to end insider trading. I'm going to create a war on fraud, even though everything I've done my entire life is fraud, and what I've been doing now is fraud. But I'm going to get the other guys on fraud because they're the guys creating the affordability crisis. But I'm not going to tell you how to do that. But I'm going to speak out of both sides of my mouth because he said, yeah, we want the houses to maintain their value as well, right? I mean, oh, what?
We're gonna do both.
We're going to do both. We're going to keep the prices high, but we're going to fix the affordability crisis. Oh, okay, Donnie. Donnie, the two-tongue, what do we call him? Donnie Two-Step? That's Donnie Two-Step right there, right? So the whole thing is absurd. The whole thing is remarkably ridiculous, and it's all a lie. And it's all a lie with millions of people watching the facade, like you said at the beginning, when millions of people are suffering, when the Epstein victims are suffering, when nobody knows what to do to fix these problems except for who?
The Clean New Deal.
Except for us.
When generational wealth for Black families, for Mexican families, for all kinds of families was wiped out, and they ain't gonna get it back anymore. And right before I start watching this, I get an article, the place where I was living, where I was helping people and cooking and getting donations and all this
Sure,
stuff
sure. In Las Vegas. Yeah, absolutely.
in Las Vegas. They kicked out or bought out or did something to the people who were running it. And the first thing they did was close the food pantry, no food pantry, no food deliveries, and no kitchen. No kitchen. I couldn't even go over there and cook anymore
So the
because
people that depended on that for sustenance that were people on hard times that needed that place to deliver for them, No longer. Why? Because mismanagement, maybe fraud, maybe all sorts of different things. Maybe somebody stealing something.
I have no idea, but the rent, okay, just think about this for a nanosecond. The rent for a lot of the people where I lived was coming from programs, non-profit programs that they had enrolled in, that they are participants of.
Was that involved with the state as well and federal subsidies potentially?
Fe the state,
Okay.
mostly state. So the rents weren't paid by the individuals. The rents were coming from a nonprofit to another nonprofit. But sometimes people will get kicked out. Why? If rent was going from one nonprofit that was paying the person's rent, living there, going to this other nonprofit that's now no longer running the complex, where'd the money go from here to here? The
Well, unless we
people,
did an audit, we wouldn't know. But the bottom line is there's a lot of people in nonprofits that are just as bullshit artists as anybody else. And
and that's why I keep telling everybody, I don't care what office you're running for. I don't care what office you're running for. Everything you do takes money, right?
oh yeah.
Okay, so what is the clean new deal?
The
What do
Clean
we
New Deal
tell
is
them?
the revelation of the largest transfer of wealth and cover up in the history of the world, bar none, to remind those of you who want to say that the Epstein files and the Epstein class and everything else is large. They are one and the same, okay?
It,
But the volume of what took place to the unfortunate victims and all of their horrible tragedies that befell them are roughly 1,600, 1,200 to 1,600, somewhere in there. Probably more, okay? Over 1,000. We're talking hundreds of millions of people,
right.
tens of trillions of dollars that were moved illegally from the Federal Reserve, which is not the power of the purse, that doesn't have to get authorization from Congress. And they figured out a way because everybody's in on it. Okay. And so, what the Epstein victims are saying perfectly, this has been going on for 4 administrations. But yet they are, because of what's going on with the political scenario at the moment, Trump's DOJ. Trump, he's the guy. He's covering it up. It's all his deal. Trump is the consequence of everything. Trump has been in the midst of it the whole time. He's not the mastermind of anything. He doesn't know anything. He wouldn't have gotten through Wharton Business School if it wasn't for being who he was and somebody paid for something and then he got, his degree stamped. He knows nothing. He said tonight, again, need I remind you, that he's going to decrease the prices at Trump RX on specific medicine 300, 400, 500 times percent. And I thought I was like, watching some bullshit commercial at midnight in some crazy place on Access Television of some like, lion used car salesman. Because people, do you not understand that it's impossible to have anything over than 100% reduction in cost? What? Now, I mean, it's
And
just,
it's free.
you know, right. It's just free,
Right?
man.
It's
It's
free.
not 405. I mean, the ludicrousness on ludicrous speed. Like,
Right.
and I'm sorry, I'm being a little bit bombastic, but I don't know what it's going to take, and we don't have much time. Like Trump said, it's going to be 6 months, and he kept saying July 1775, and then he
Right.
added the dollar for a year or something like that. It was something weird. I didn't.
It was the money he was gonna give. They're gonna write a check, okay?
The veterans, I guess.
Every veteran. And so somebody said it was going to be 1,775. And he thought, well, Oh no, let it be 1776. Like he fucking even knows when the goddamn Declaration of Independence was.
Right, right, and nor do, I mean, and then again, he's talking. I mean, it's just like the I talked to my friend Chaz about this the other day, and growing up on Orwell and really trying to full understand doublespeak and kind of this kind of genius diabolical scenario. This guy's just a bloviating idiot. And like I've said over and over for years, and I brought this up to you the other day, I'm like, for years, and if you look back to my essays on X, if you look back to my truth bombs 3 years ago, 2 years ago, I always said it's like girls going into a fraternity, they get roofied and raped, and they get gang raped by a bunch of guys that then later throw them in the trash. And then they lie, deny, switch the blame, and implicate, and blame the victim for maybe wearing something that was too promiscuous, right?
Right.
So I didn't realize I was being literal with this Epstein class. I, what it has surprised me. I am shocked at the depths of depravity of what we're in the midst of, and yet, even with King Charles arresting his brother, well, Prince Andrew, formerly known as, right, whatever,
Not of
Mountain
Minnesota.
Flowers, the Duke of Mountain. How there's this word that
Mountbatten.
Mountbatten. That's it, Mountbatten. Thank you very much. I mean, and then like we've talked about before, Brazil's Supreme Court, you know, took down Bolsonaro for all of the same stuff that Trump's in the midst of, trying to basically steal the election. And then, of course, we saw South Korea, and the United States is just this, like, we saw yesterday. And then Trump was taking credit. This was another thing that blew my mind. He was taking credit for the assassination, the murder, the hit on El Mention, the guy who's in charge of one of the biggest cartels down in Mexico that just happened like 2 days ago. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, I thought it was the Mexican Special Forces. It was like one of those things. He was like reaching in the bag of tricks, and it was like, hey, that's what we did. And I'm actually curious if it was American Special Forces, which would then, if Claudia Scheinbaum didn't invite them in, and then we took out, wouldn't that be kind of like one of these cross-border sort of, like what we saw in Venezuela and what we saw, you know what I mean? I got suspicious for a second there. I'm like, wait a second, did he just wage war on the cartels, or what is he playing ball with? Is he like leveraging some, useful cartel guys to say, we take out this guy for PR stunt, we'll let you have all the drug traffic? You know what I'm saying? It's like everything he does is just bullshit. It's just Don the Con, Rico Pito
So,
Pig, Donnie Two Step. I mean, that's all this is. And he's an idiot. And yet everybody watches him, gives him the comprehensive sort of credibility of like, no, he's our president. If I were in mainstream media, I would be like, especially mainstream media that, well, it's an impossibility, but as we all now know, they're all owned by the same guys, that are on Trump's team because of all of the things that are going on. All of this stuff is the worst outcome nightmare in the history of anybody who's been alive over 30 years, who knows anything about what the United States is supposed to be. The young people, I think, they just feel, I think it's a video game. That's the only thing I can conjecture, that they just think stuff shows up on their phone, on TikTok. Hey, they can go on dance, they can go do some really cool stuff, but then this happens. They have no comprehension, to my knowledge, of what's going on, right? Corruption births and fuels fascism. We know they're going to build these warehouses in Arizona, yada, yada, yada. They've got this huge budget. They got the big, beautiful bill. Trump's gotten away with over $1 billion. The Supreme Court's sitting in the front row. He's as idiotic as it gets, but nobody's stopping him. And what did Chaz say yesterday? It's going to take tens of millions of
oh,
people coming together. Who else has said that for, I don't know, years and years and years? That was Chaz, not even knowing that. He's like, it's going to this way.
yep,
Yes. What
yep,
we're trying to tell you, people,
yep.
if you're as infuriated by what you're seeing as we are, you gotta stop being an idiot. You gotta stop being a coward. You've got to stop being. I mean, this is so pedantic. What we're looking at is less than absurd as it relates to elementary school tactics. Okay, that are in complete control. And where is the law? Well, the law is where we are with the new Untouchables. If we could get tens of millions of people to get behind the whistleblowers that we have access to take the state legislatures to be able to get this information to the people, because obviously nobody in media is doing it, because it's the same stuff, my friends, that all of you are outraged about every time you hear the Epstein victims were ignored 20 years ago. We're dealing with stuff. I just saw this woman whose last name is Adams. She gave a testimony of her sister who died a long time ago. One of these outrageous, I believe, suicides, I'm pretty sure, similar to Virginia Giuffre. But her case was in 1999. We've
The
been
one,
dealing with this for
yeah,
decades. This is the consequence of
right.
everything that we have been feeding you on a platinum platter every day for now 4 years. Okay? It's the $71 trillion truth. What's going to happen if you give a crack addict a safe filled with crack that can always be filled, so it's endless crack, and you give them the freaking code to get that crack? What do you think is going to happen? Not good things.
Not good things.
That's what we're in the midst of. And all of this is just playing stupid people so that they can blame everybody else. And everybody does like that Bugs Bunny cartoon I saw when I was a kid, where, he's pointing every which way to Sunday to confuse you so you don't know who's doing what, when, and how. That's the information we give you. And again, we're validated every which way to Sunday every single day. But I want to let you finish with this, because I do think it is important for us to kind of really think about what Roseanne started off with. It is about, are you watching this from the street on your phone, and this comes, are you suffering? Are you, maybe barely hanging on by a thread? You don't want to speak up at your job because your job's been taken over by a bunch of MAGAs. Where are you in the food chain? We're telling you that the system gave tens of trillions of dollars illegally to the Epstein class to rape and pillage the world. And they're not going to give it up. They're not going to give it up. I just saw Donald Trump unapologetic. He didn't give a flying fuck about the Epstein girls there. He didn't show any sensibilities towards that whatsoever. He just bulldozed over it as if they didn't exist. And that's the whole point. You don't exist. Nobody exists except for friends of Trump. And then MAGAs who are in the, mega right-wing churches that feel like they're going to get something out of it. But at the same time, they're in no better position than anybody else is. They're in the exact same state. Are they not? What favors are they getting? Can you explain? Are they maybe? And even if veterans got $1,776 on July, how far does that go in this world? No city that I know of very far. So, take us home. You're right. It's about the suffering of the unheard until the unheard make themselves heard and they determine that they're not going to be expendable anymore. That's been my message for 14 years.
And I really do believe with all my heart, with all my head, with everything I got inside me, I believe that everybody can do something. Something. It doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be real lot. It's just got to be, you build sand castles on the beach, okay? And you take all this sand, and it's all these little tiny grains of sand, and you take it and you pat it together, and you make these wonderful sand castles, okay? We can do that. We're all these little tiny grains. We can do this. We just need to know how the people in power, and they're, you know what? They're a small group. They're a small group compared to us. We all the little grains of sand have to understand how we can defeat the powerful. You've given the details. The Khan has given the details. 759 truth bombs, of which I have seen every one. And I'm even going back, taking quotes from stuff you did 2, 3 years ago, so I can show people that the message has not changed. Okay. Everybody has a part to play. Everybody has a part to play. Even when you are really down in, I know I've got people that are now going to have no place to cook and no place to get the food, but they got a phone. Okay. They got a phone, and I make my call to her and I say, hey, I'll do this for you because I want to. And I want you to do something for me. I want you to understand how valuable your life is. Because those people out in the street don't think they're like real valuable.
Well, let me offer this. Look, first of all, I appreciate you saying that, and I'm glad you want to reach out to those types of folks. And I always want us to empower everybody we can, but that's not my target. Okay,
I
never,
know. I know.
never has been, and I'm going to give you an exact understanding why. So, probably the easiest analogy right now, even though it's not exactly what I'm trying to do, but to your point, here's a bridge, right? So, the Epstein victims right now are quite frankly powerful. Okay, now 2 or 3 years ago, they were all in secret meetings on individual basis being forced to take some sort of
Settlements.
settlement,
Yeah.
okay, where they had to sign NDAs and they couldn't name names. So we know there was $270 million that got spread out. Probably most of it went to St. Thomas and all of the attorneys and everything else. And then there was whatever left over. And I do know that they did get exact a pound of flesh money, civil, violations and fines and that sort of thing, to the likes of Leonard Leo and others that were hedge funders. I don't know what all of the evidence was, but these women who were the survivors, and I don't mean that like they weren't survivors, but that's what we're calling them. And we all know who they
As
are.
opposed to victims.
Yeah, okay, they took money settlements now in NDAs, so they can't name names, right? So that's why Thomas Massey and Mokana and Rakaka, I mean Raskin, and the lot are using. They can usurp that in Congress to get the files, and again to emphasize, this is from the Department of Justice. This doesn't even include the CIA, which I know has mountains. I mean, imagine trying to go to the CIA to figure out this stuff. Have you ever noticed the CIA is always like out of touch, out of sight, out of, nobody even comes close to even bringing them up in
They
conversation.
don't have a public phone number.
Right. And it's like, okay, yeah, like Epstein wasn't deeply involved. And by the way, watching again this interview, and I got to finish the rest of it, and I wish I would have done that tonight, obviously, or I should say, in addition, not in addition, instead of the State of the Union, which was just ultimately a waste of time. But it did again emphasize what I already knew. They're gunning for the midterms. They are not going to let the midterms be the midterms. They've got a sabotage plan at play. They're going all in. They are not going to give up. Who's they? The billionaire class, the MAGA class. It's not by, like Charlton Heston said, not from my cold dead hands. They're all in. And I mean, what we've seen from Doge, what we've seen from ICE, what we've seen from, incursions around the world, these guys are all in. They're all in. They don't give a shit what women are going to complain about with the Epstein victims. They don't care. They're like, okay, you got me. Even though, but that is growing, right? And so to go back to why these women are powerful, now they've got all of the Democrats behind them. The same Democrats, Chuck Schumer, right? Chuck Schumer had the gall to be in front of that group today as if he was a champion of the Epstein victims.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, he was there the whole time covering it up. Okay. All right. But okay, mea culpa, whatever. So, we all know it. It's all bullshit. Merrick Garland's just as guilty as Pam Bondi, just as guilty as Eric Holder, etc. Right? But again, the attorneys like Brad Edwards and all of these other guys with Rokana, they're people that are smart. They're people that know how the system works. They know how to use the information against their political enemies for a political outcome. They are strategic. They are thoughtful. And I will say this, I see Rokana all the time. He's the only one that I really have a lot of respect for. I think Rokana's smart. I think he's legitimately smart. And when I listen to Rokana talk, I listen to him say, oh my God, how deep does this go? Who's involved? He's like, this caught me by surprise. And you can see the wheels squeaking where he's like, how far can I really go? And I think what he's saying is, how far are you willing to go, America? But I can assure you, America, that the plan requisite this corruption has to be as strategic, relentless, innovative, and the people behind it have to be as good to execute as the enemy is, which are made up by billionaires and the billionaire technocrats that created Project 2025. That didn't just happen. It's been happening for now at least 5 decades with the smartest people with the most money behind them. And to your point about money, right? How are you going to do it without money? Well, you're not going to do it without money. But what we're trying to get you to understand in the American people, we've already spent millions of dollars, millions that you didn't pay for, that the government didn't pay for, to do the work that the government hid, the same as it hid the Epstein files. And we got the largest racketeering conspiracy and cover-up in history that led to the $71 trillion truth that I found. Why? Because I'm relentless, okay? I am a competitor. I'm every bit as relentless as Russell Vogt. I'm every bit as relentless as anybody they got on the other side. But I do it for liberty and justice and truth and integrity because I hate fascism, okay? The Holocaust was my North Star my whole life, okay? And now I, as a Jewish person, have to deal with the reality that a lot of the Epstein class are Jews that did stuff that everybody had accused Jews of forever, and it makes me sick. It makes me sick. But I also know, thank God, that there's a lot of Jews that were on the right side of this, just so you know. There was attorneys like Mark Dan. There was guys that were doing the stuff with, they're everywhere in terms of the legal system and economics and everything else that were on the right side of this. So please keep that in mind, where at one point, Bannon and company are going to blame the Jews. They're going to hang out guys like Howard Lutnick to dry. I'm sure. Absolutely sure of it. But anyway, we'll see what happens there. I know it's very awkward, very uncomfortable, but I'm trying to cut through your dystopia to speak truth to anybody who understands our system. We are approaching the 250th anniversary of the American Revolution that was created to purge tyranny of King George III, which wasn't one guy. It was Parliament. It was the East India Trading Company. It was the Royal Navy. It was the Redcoats. It was the apparatus of power that created imperialism to rape and pillage countries around the world to feed those that were in control. The tyranny, the tyrannical class, quite frankly, right? The aristocracy, i.e. the Epstein class, which is what this is all about with the 250th anniversary. So if you understand the history of the United States, you understand the Civil War, you understand the abolitionists, you understand those who fought against fascism, those who fought in the civil rights, all of the ones who made this in order to form a more perfect union, I can assure you we got betrayed by Obama every bit as much as we're getting betrayed by Donald Trump. Why? Because Obama had the power to basically take down the system, but instead allowed all of these, and it's not shenanigans. It was illegal behavior. It was racketeering that we provided tens of trillions of dollars for. And so until we smash this incredible illusion, right? This illusion that, one, we're going to have free and fair elections. I don't think we are. I hope we do, but we have to get hundreds of people running for the midterms on the.
435 are running
Okay,
for
perfect. Thank you.
Congress,
Okay,
okay?
so
For the
the whole
House.
lot, the whole lot, the whole thing is on
And
the
then there's like 33 or
in
something
the Senate.
running for Senate.
And
Okay.
we got to get them to run on the Clean New Deal because the biggest conundrum that we have are the Chuck Schumers of the revolving door billionaire DNC meritocracy that has sold us down the river, and those of us who are speaking truth. And I'm not a communist. I never have been. I say to anybody, if you're a socialist, go be a socialist. Go create a co-op in Oregon and create some sort of, I don't know, micro.
Community gardens, any
Well,
kind of
whatever it is, that's
business,
fine.
anything.
But
Right.
this is like the New Deal, but with
Better,
much more information. And again,
better.
and I say this all the time, and this is my final piece. I always knew when I started off my journey 13 years ago when it's 13, let's just call it 13. This whole thing is the 13-year odyssey because of just that is pretty accurate from the standpoint that I made a film called Forward 13 Waking Up the American Dream. And it led into the con that led into the Clean New Deal. Why? Because we did the work to ask the right questions. What is the paradigm of power? The paradigm of power is the military industrial financial fossil fuel complex. I knew it decades ago that they would try to control the system because I come from the oil and gas background in terms of my family. I knew how powerful that entity was. I learned so much more later in terms of entire global commerce is dependent on the oil and gas industry, quite frankly, for a whole giant universe of products, whether it's plastics, this, that, and the other. It's not just transportation. But people, this past week, in addition to everything else that's taken place, the final nail in the coffin was they got rid of the endangerment clause of the of the impetus of our government to create all sorts of pathways and regulations to wean us from fossil fuels. Now, obviously, Biden didn't go far enough, and he was trying to play, both sides. Quite frankly, he was like, "Yeah, we're going to drill more than anybody in the world, but at the same time, we're providing more research for renewables," and that's true. And they did both, but at the same time, at what expense? They left the door open for the fossil fuel financial military industrial complex to come in and completely hijack the United States. And they've been in control the whole time anyway. It's just a death knell in this whole thing. So if you're somebody who's a scientist, an engineer in the renewable energy space, and you finally know because you just got your funding clipped and you got to come out of your silos and we got to get innovative, we got $71 trillion right here, my friends, to rebuild the renewable energy paradigm, first and foremost. And what we always say is that this is, the purpose is to purge the misery of tyranny. That's what this is tyranny, to unleash the renaissance of possibility. We need doers. We need smart people. We need dynamic people. We need competitors. We need people who know what's at stake. And most importantly, people of character and people who are committed to the integrity of the United States being of, by, and for the people with liberty and justice for all because the integrity of character. That's what the Clean New Deal is. And if you can't see that at this stage of the game and what's at stake, everything is at stake. And it's so stupid and easy to see. Trump has stolen over $1 billion, maybe $4 billion in a year while people are suffering. Are you kidding me? What else? What else can we do?
What else we can do is look, nothing surprises me. Okay. It does not surprise me that you and many people, and me kind of sort of, think we may not have free and fair elections. Okay. But I also understand I will not go down without a fight.
Right.
You will not go down without a fight. There are, I think, I thought I saw the number 27 states where the secretaries of state went Can you see that? To Trump. To
To try
don't
to take over the
okay.
federalize the election.
So
Yeah.
what we have to do is we have to do two things at the same time. Just like we've talked about, we're building the plane and flying it at the same time. Okay. What we have to do is, yes, there is this terrible legislation that cannot be passed so that they can just take over
The SAVE Act.
elections. Okay. The SAVE Act. We need to know that. But we also need to know the new Untouchables, people like Bill Black and June Carbone and Mark Dan and Paul Pelletier
Lewis Clark
and Lewis Clark.
and Eric Vaughn and David K. Johnson.
And
Not,
yeah, okay.
but yeah.
They have strategies. And I've been putting that meme out on Bluesky about look, you cannot wait for the midterms.
That's right. It
You
has to
gotta
happen now.
you gotta do this now.
That's the whole thing with the whistleblowers and subpoena the likes of Elon Musk to go to state legislatures because Elon Musk already spilled the beans that he was involved with the quid pro quo in the election, among other things. Not to mention what he might know of the the Epstein files. Look, I'll show one of the product that we have. Look, can you read this?
Do you teach your children that it's okay to lie, steal, and cheat to become president? And on the back it says, so why did you vote for somebody who does that?
Right, and then what does this stuff say?
I can't see it.
So
I know. Wait,
truth
this
over
is our
lies, lies, and
pollster.
lies. And and this is me pushing it up to the top of the peak. But if millions of you help to push the Clean New Deal to the top, and then we push it over the side, all of the liars down over here will take them bowling because they're bowling pins of corruption. Look, we've got all the answers. We've got
We do.
access to the top legal minds in the country. We've got the experience. We've got the heartbeat and soul, and quite frankly, the brilliance and the strategy of Roseanne Rabiola Miele, the mighty mouse out of Chicago, who is literally the heart and soul of this whole thing. But you've got Patrick Lovell, the producer with the $71 trillion truth. I've said it before, and I mean this with everything I am. You guys want a blood sport? I'll tell you what, in that UFC rink on the side of the White House, put me up against, and this is a challenge to all you MAGAs. I want Tucker Carlson. I want Steve Bannon. I want Stephen Miller. I want who else am I missing? Let's throw Howard Lutnick in there. How about that? And who else? I'll take them all on one at a time, all in a row. I bet 1 minute. Let's see, 1 minute rounds with each of them. That's all I need, really. Just if you guys want to see that, do that. Or in the meantime, pay attention to the information that I actually have, which is the information that reveals all, not the, the tip of the iceberg of the Epstein scenario. It's the whole freaking universe of this stuff. And by the way, I've got a truth bomb 2 days ago that spells it out. And for all of you out there, my message to you that are Obama fans, my God, you don't understand Catherine Brummel, who was in his White House, legal staff, became not the attorney general. I said that the other day. General counsel of all things, the giant vampire squid, aka Goldman Sachs, during the time when they took out the Arkansas Teacher Pensions Union, the Pipe Fitters of America, and the Plumbers of America to create the affordability crisis. Did you hear that from Zoran Mandani? Have you heard that from AOC? Have you heard that from Bernie Sanders? Have you heard that from, who am I missing? Elizabeth Warren? No, you haven't. Why, Roseanne? Why haven't they heard it from those people?
Because they know what's going on and they can't say it. They're part of it.
That's right. Can anybody God, I said his name a million times during this broad. I'm so tired now. New York Schumer. Can these guys fix the problem that they created and they sat on the sidelines watching the whole time?
The people who broke the system can't fix it.
So we need you, America. We need you,
That's right.
people that are sick of this, that understand the language that we're saying, to unite with us, to run for office. We will work together. We will build this plane at the same time. We've literally got 6 months to do it. Okay. We have got to get thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, and then eventually millions to do what this says right here. That's it. And that's what we have to do. And that's what our founding fathers would expect, quite frankly, because it is up to us, the American people. Nobody else is going to save us, but we've put together the architecture that can. All you have to do is discover the truth. And when you have the truth, Roseanne, what do you have?
When you have the truth, you're not only bulletproof, but in my case, you are drinking from the fountain of youth.
Become a nuclear reaction to the big bang of truth that we're dropping and force the light into the darkness. Guys, we have no other, we have no choice. There is no time. The time is now. It's a paradox. It's a conundrum, but you have to wise up and you have to get involved, because if you don't, blame yourself for what's coming.
That's
Thank you.
right.
Onwards and upwards. I got to